LeBron James has always been known for his imposing presence on and off the court. One of the greatest basketball players of all time, he has built a billion-dollar empire over the years, becoming a global icon not only in sport, but also in business. However, behind the success and recognition, a curiosity always bothered him. Was the luxurious treatment he received in five-star hotels really because of the impeccable service, or simply because of the weight of his name? This doubt grew over the years, especially after hearing reports that the experience at many of these establishments changed drastically depending on who the guest was. LeBron wanted to know the truth, and the only way to find out was to put himself in the shoes of someone completely anonymous. The idea started as a joke between friends, but soon became a personal challenge. How could a black man almost 2 meters tall go unnoticed in an environment where he was used to being treated like royalty? To make the experiment even more realistic, he decided to not only change his appearance, but also build a new identity. An old friend, an expert in film makeup, helped him create a convincing disguise. Fake wrinkles, a discreet wig, and contact lenses transformed the NBA star into an everyman, a middle-aged businessman looking for a quiet night in a luxury hotel. LeBron didn't want privileges. He didn't seek recognition. He just wanted to experience the reality of an ordinary citizen, to understand how he was treated when he didn't have his name on the hotel reservation. He chose one of the most prestigious establishments in the country, a place where he had stayed several times and always received treatment worthy of a king. But this time, his arrival would not be accompanied by security guards, paparazzi, or employees ready to assist him at any cost. This time, he would enter like any other guest. The question was, how would it be received? As he walked through the hotel doors under his new identity, LeBron felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't fear, but a different excitement. For the first time in years, he wasn't LeBron James, the billionaire, the star, the legend. He was just a man looking for a room. And soon I would find out if the luxury of five-star hotels really was for everyone. Imagine walking into a place where normally you're treated like royalty. But this time no one knows who you are. Have you ever wondered how you would be treated if you didn't carry your name, your appearance, or your status? Would respect and courtesy be the same? Comment here. Do you believe that money or fame changes the way people treat us? I want to know your opinion. LeBron knew that to test his theory in the most effective way possible, he needed to choose a hotel that matched his own status. The location he selected was not just any five-star hotel. It was one of the most prestigious in the country, known for hosting presidents, tycoons, and of course, some of the biggest stars in the world of sport and entertainment. He had stayed there countless times, always being welcomed with a red carpet, extremely helpful staff, and treatment worthy of a king. However, that was the big question. Were the luxury and courtesy offered in that place really part of the hotel's impeccable service, or just a reflection of the name on the reservation? The hotel was located in one of the most exclusive areas of the city, a true paradise of comfort and sophistication. The imposing facade showcased classical architecture combined with modern elements, conveying a sense of grandeur that impressed anyone who passed by. The lobby, decorated with crystal chandeliers and Italian marble, exuded an atmosphere of exclusivity, where every detail seemed carefully thought out to reinforce the idea that only a select group of people could be there. The service was impeccable, at least for those who arrived carrying a big name. But LeBron didn't want to arrive as a celebrity. This time he would just be an ordinary businessman, without reservations made in advance, without his name on the hotel's customer service systems. He wanted to test the service from the first moment, to find out if any guest would receive the same level of attention and respect that he always received. The plan was simple. Present yourself at reception as a business traveler and request a room without revealing your true identity. As he walked to the reception, he felt the eyes around him. Not the admiring looks he was used to receiving, but those curious and judgmental looks. Even in disguise, LeBron carried an imposing presence, and it didn't take long to realize that some people there were trying to understand if he really belonged in that environment. He knew that moment would be decisive. As soon as he opened his mouth and asked for a room, He would discover whether the hotel's reputation was based on impeccable service or on a selective system where only the richest and most powerful were worthy of respect. LeBron knew his face was one of the most recognized on the planet. With more than 2 meters in height and a presence that commanded respect without him having to say a single word, remaining unnoticed would be the real challenge. He couldn't just put on a cap and expect no one to notice him. Any mistake in your disguise could jeopardize the entire experience, and any glance of recognition could ruin your plan before it even begins. To avoid this, he turned to film makeup experts, professionals used to transforming actors into completely different characters. The process was meticulous. Firstly, they altered their features with discrete prosthetics on their nose and cheekbones, slightly modifying their facial structure without exaggerations that could appear artificial. Next came the more subtle details, like added wrinkles on her forehead and around her eyes, giving her a more aged appearance. The beard, always well-trimmed and characteristic of his public image, was replaced by a grey goatee, carefully glued to his skin to appear completely natural. Her eyebrows were darkened and slightly thickened, while contact lenses altered the tone of her eyes. Hair was one of the most critical points of the job's formation. Instead of the shaved head that everyone knew, he wore a discreet wig with grey strands strategically distributed to create a more mature and distinguished look. But the big trick was in the posture. LeBron couldn't just look different. He needed to act different. He adjusted the way he walked, making his steps less energetic, his posture less dominant. Instead of lifting his chin as he always did, he started to keep his gaze slightly lowered, like someone avoiding attracting attention. Even the voice needed work. The deep and unmistakable tone was softened, and the way of speaking became more leisurely, less intense. The result was impressive. When he looked in the mirror, LeBron no longer saw the superstar, the billionaire, the global icon. In the reflection was an ordinary man, perhaps a middle-aged businessman, someone no one would notice amid the luxury and refinement of the five-star hotel. He knew the disguise was good, but there was only one way to truly test it: face reception and see if he would go unnoticed. Fawati, arrival at the hotel. The cold reception and the manager's first impression, LeBron walked through the hotel's revolving doors with measured steps, feeling the change in the environment as soon as he stepped into the lobby. The air conditioning maintained an impeccably pleasant temperature, while a sophisticated perfume wafted through the air, a subtle scent of vanilla and cedar that exuded exclusivity. He had passed through this entrance countless times in the past, but this time, without his real identity, everything felt different. No one came to meet him with practiced smiles or warm greetings. No staff rushed to carry your luggage or offer assistance. He was just another man entering that luxurious universe, and that was evident in the first few seconds. The lobby was busy. Elegant guests circulated around the space, some being accompanied by helpful staff, while others relaxed in leather armchairs, sipping glasses of champagne as if it were the most natural thing in the world. LeBron walked toward the front desk, where a young attendant with a restrained smile and stiff posture took him in briefly before looking away to something seemingly more important. There was no immediate recognition that he usually received, no exchange of glances that suggested admiration or respect. The attendant seemed too busy to give him more than a few seconds of attention. Before he could say anything, a tall, thin man wearing an impeccable suit and an expression of discreet disdain approached the counter. It was the hotel manager, someone LeBron had seen before but clearly didn't recognize now. He looked him up and down, analyzing his appearance as if he were calculating in seconds whether this ordinary man really belonged there. The difference in treatment was subtle but undeniable. There was no rush to serve you, no interest in ensuring your experience was flawless. LeBron cleared his throat, and his voice softened by his disguise, politely asked about room availability. The manager gave the attendant a quick look, as if he expected someone else to handle the situation, but soon turned his attention back to him. The tone of his response was courteous but unenthusiastic, lacking the warmth and hospitality that had always been a part of his stays there. Something was different, and LeBron knew in that instant that the real test was just beginning. LeBron, didn't need long to notice the difference in service. As he waited for the manager's response about room availability, he observed the movement around him. Other guests arrived with shiny suitcases, accompanied by helpful staff who carried their luggage before they even had to ask. Well-dressed couples were greeted with broad smiles, and men in suits received formal and polite greetings. But for him, who was now nothing more than an ordinary man, there was no such attention. The manager looked at him with slight discomfort, as if his presence there was a mistake that needed to be corrected quickly. When he finally responded, his voice was cold, professional, but without any enthusiasm. He reported that the hotel was almost full, and that unfortunately the only options available were the more expensive suites. LeBron immediately saw through the trick. It was a subtle test to ward off guests they deemed unsuitable. Instead of offering different types of accommodations, the manager purposely mentioned only the most luxurious suites, hoping that he would give up and leave. This type of tactic was known in high-end establishments, a discreet way of selecting clientele, without having to explicitly say that someone was not welcome. LeBron feigned hesitation, but didn't back down. He said he would like to see availability, and if necessary would pay for the suite. The manager's expression changed slightly, as if he hadn't expected this answer. Before he could react, a new guest arrived at the counter. A well-dressed man, with an expensive watch on his wrist, was immediately greeted by another attendant, who greeted him warmly and offered him a drink while checking his reservation. The difference was stark. While LeBron was treated coldly and with a clear attempt to discourage him from staying, the new guest was welcomed as an illustrious guest. LeBron also noticed that the employee's tone of voice changed depending on who they were assisting. For customers they considered important, words were spoken with enthusiasm, posture was more helpful, and gestures were more respectful. For him, there was no attempt to create a welcoming environment. Everything was dry, distant, as if they were just following a protocol without any intention of making your experience pleasant. He was seeing firsthand that the hotel's hospitality was not for everyone. LeBron had already noticed the difference in treatment, but what happened next confirmed everything he suspected. After insisting that he could pay for the suite, the manager changed his expression. There was something between disbelief and irritation in his gaze, as if he wasn't used to being challenged by someone who, in his eyes, clearly didn't belong there. Instead of simply going through with the reservation, he paused, looked LeBron up and down once more, and with a tone that barely hid his contempt, asked if he was sure he could afford the stay. The question was not innocent. It was a test, an attempt to embarrass him, to make him feel small in the face of the luxury around him. LeBron remained calm, took a deep breath, and reaffirmed that he wanted the fourth. The manager hesitated for a moment, then cast a discreet glance at a nearby security guard. It was a silent request for reinforcement. The security guard, a burly man dressed in black, began to slowly approach. The surrounding climate changed. Other guests realized what was happening and began to watch curiously. Some whispered among themselves, others just watched, as if waiting for a predictable outcome. The scene was becoming a spectacle, and LeBron was the protagonist of a humiliating situation that he never imagined he would experience. The manager then stepped forward, crossed his arms, and adopted a firmer tone. He said the hotel had a strict reservation policy and could not accept customers without a previously registered credit card. It was more of an excuse. LeBron knew that in any other situation, all he would have to do was present a document and an initial payment to guarantee the room. But now, under that look of superiority, everything seemed like a theater carefully rehearsed to keep him away. He remained silent for a moment, analyzing the situation. The security guard was already a few meters away, ready to act at the slightest sign from the manager. LeBron felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the powerlessness of being judged solely on his appearance. The manager then released the last card. With a cynical smile and false cordiality, he asked him to leave, claiming that it was not a suitable hotel for him. The humiliation was complete, and LeBron knew in that instant that he couldn't let this go unnoticed. LeBron felt his blood boil inside, but he kept his expression controlled. He had already faced gigantic challenges on the courts, moments of extreme pressure in championship finals, hostile fans shouting at him, but nothing compared to that moment. It was not a game, there were no clear rules, and what was at stake was not a title, but his dignity. He could see the conviction in the manager's eyes that he was doing the right thing. The man did not see him as a customer, but as a nuisance that needed to be eliminated from the luxurious environment as quickly as possible. If it had been a younger, more impulsive LeBron, perhaps he would have reacted differently. But there, in disguise, he was not LeBron James. He couldn't raise his voice, couldn't reveal himself, not yet. He needed to see how far this situation would go. He needed to feel what so many people had already faced, being judged not for who they were, but for who others thought they were. With a steady gaze, he stuck to the role. He feigned surprise, made a restrained gesture of disbelief, and asked with a calm but slightly offended tone if he was being expelled for no reason. The manager, who until then had tried to maintain a false friendliness, now showed signs of impatience. He said that the hotel had the right to deny a stay to anyone it wanted, that rules were rules and that he couldn't do anything about it. The security guard, now very close, crossed his arms, just waiting for a signal to act. LeBron took a deep breath. It wasn't just about him at that moment, it was about what it represented. People like him, who grew up facing invisible barriers, knew very well what it was like to be in the wrong position, in the wrong place, in the wrong eyes. He looked around, noticing that the other guests' gazes were divided. Some were clearly amused by the scene, others seemed uncomfortable, but no one said anything. The silence of luxury was deafening. He could have ended it right there. All he had to do was reveal his identity and see the manager's expression turn into pure panic. But no, not yet. Instead, he raised his hands in a peaceful gesture and stepped back, accepting the order to retreat. But inside, he already knew this game wasn't over yet. LeBron walked toward the exit, feeling every eye on him. The feeling of injustice still burned inside him, but he maintained his stance. It wasn't time to explode, it wasn't time to confront. He wanted every person there to believe, for a few more minutes, that they had gotten rid of him, that the manager had won. But the truth was about to change drastically. As soon as he reached the door, he did something unexpected. It stopped. He took a deep breath and slowly turned on his heel to face the lobby once again. This time without rushing, without fear. The manager, who was already walking away satisfied, noticed the movement and frowned. The security guard stood firm, ready to act if necessary. The silence in the room intensified when LeBron, without rushing, raised his hands to his fake beard and ripped it off with one precise movement. Then he slid his fingers into the wig and slowly removed it, revealing the natural shine of his shaved head. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his contact lenses, revealing his real eyes. The lobby, which had previously been filled with discreet murmurs, fell into absolute silence. The first few seconds were pure disbelief. The staff, the guests, even the security guard, all seemed frozen in time, as if their brains were trying to process the scene. The manager blinked a few times, opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The transformation before his eyes was unbelievable. That man, who minutes before he had judged and expelled without hesitation, was none other than LeBron James, one of the greatest stars in the history of basketball and one of the most influential men in the world. The impact of the revelation was immediate. Some guests held their hands to their mouths in shock. Others hurriedly pulled out their cell phones, starting to record what promised to be one of the most embarrassing moments in the hotel's history. The manager, now pale, seemed to be struggling to find words. His body stiffened, and his eyes widened in an almost comical way. He knew he had made an irreparable mistake, but before he could react, LeBron took a step forward and, with a firm voice full of meaning, asked something that echoed throughout the room. "What now? Do you still think this hotel isn't for me?" The manager remained motionless for a few moments, his eyes wide and his skin becoming increasingly pale. The silence in the lobby was so thick that any word spoken there would sound like thunder. He blinked a few times, as if trying to deny what his own eyes were seeing. The man he had treated coldly, who he had humiliated and cast out, was none other than LeBron James, Not just any guest, but one of the most influential and respected figures in the world. The weight of the mistake fell on him like a block of concrete, and suddenly his confident, arrogant posture crumbled. The shock spread quickly. Employees who had previously ignored LeBron were now rushing toward him, desperate to fix what appeared to be an irreversible disaster. The receptionist, who had barely paid him any attention, was now smiling nervously, trying to appear helpful. The lobby attendants, who until then had kept their distance, began to approach, trying, in some way, to remedy the situation. The security guard, who had previously seemed ready to escort him out, now lowered his head, not knowing where to put his hands. The manager, realizing that he needed to act, forced a smile, trying to restore the false friendliness he used to. "Welcome the most influential customers." His voice, once firm and indifferent, now trembled slightly. He held out his hands in an almost practiced manner, as if he were trying to erase what he had done with a simple gesture. "Mr. James, what a pleasant surprise," he said, with a failed attempt to sound natural. "There has been a terrible misunderstanding, and I guarantee that—" LeBron raised his hand, effortlessly stopping him. His eyes were fixed on the man in front of him, and his expression was serious, filled with an authority that came not only from his name, but from the truth he had just exposed. He didn't need to raise his voice. His very presence was enough to crush any excuse they tried to come up with. As staff rushed to offer luxurious accommodations and apologies, guests watched, some recording on their cell phones. The manager was in a cold sweat, aware that nothing he said could erase what he had done. He was no longer in control of the situation, and for the first time that night, he felt the real weight of the consequences. The impact of the moment was instantaneous. As soon as LeBron revealed his identity and despair took over the hotel manager and staff, guests' cell phones were already recording. Videos began to be posted in real time, and the internet did what it does best: spread the story like wildfire. Within minutes, the first clips of the manager's public humiliation began circulating on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Phrases like "LeBron James kicked out of luxury hotel" and "manager humiliates LeBron without knowing who he is" shot up to trending topics. Journalists and influencers quickly picked up on the story. Sports news channels interrupted their programming to comment on the event, while gossip portals explored every detail of the viral video. Celebrities spoke out, some laughing at the situation and others outraged by the treatment given to the star. The debate went beyond the simple question of a recognition error. It has become a symbol of the prejudice and elitism present in the most luxurious environments in the world. The hotel, once an icon of sophistication and exclusivity, now found itself at the center of a global scandal. The comments section of his social networks was flooded with messages demanding a position. "Do you treat everyone like this, or just those who you think don't have money?" said a comment with thousands of likes. "Imagine how they treat people who have no reputation. Shameful," said another. The hotel's review site was bombarded with negative reviews and hashtags like "Das boycott luxury." Hotel began to gain traction. LeBron in turn didn't need to say much. His silence only fueled public outrage, and each new report only reinforced the idea that he had exposed an uncomfortable truth. The hotel tried to act quickly, issuing an official note apologizing and claiming that it was all an unfortunate misunderstanding. But no one bought the excuse. The video showed everything, with no room for interpretation. There was no error, just the harsh reality of a system that judged people by their appearance before anything else. The story was no longer about LeBron. It was about everyone who had gone through similar situations without anyone paying attention. But now, everyone was watching, and the world wanted answers. And have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were treated differently because of your appearance, or because they thought you didn't fit into a certain place? LeBron's story shows what happens when there are cameras and attention, but what about when no one is watching? Comment here, I want to know your opinion. The damage was already done. No official apology, no rehearsed justification would be enough to erase the image of the manager, humiliating one of the most famous men in the world, without even imagining who he was. The hotel's reputation, once associated with luxury and sophistication, was now tarnished by a global scandal. What was once a coveted destination for tycoons and celebrities had now become a symbol of elitism and discrimination. Long-time guests began cancelling their reservations, while the hotel's business partners rethought their associations with the brand. The hotel's social media was uncontrollable. Each new post was bombarded with comments demanding explanations, boycotts, and requests to fire the entire team involved in the incident. Influencers and activists began to use the case as an example of the prejudice rooted in society. And even public figures who had never spoken out about the hotel before felt the need to condemn what happened. The hashtag #JusticeForAll grew, every day showing that the revolt went far beyond LeBron's figure. Internal pressure also intensified. The hotel owners, fearing irreparable losses, were forced to act quickly. First, the manager was removed. Then came the announcement that he was no longer part of the team. But the problem was no longer just that employee. The entire hotel was under scrutiny, and no single firing would change the public perception that the place did not treat all guests with the same respect. In a desperate attempt to repair the crisis, management announced a restructuring and staff training plan, promising a new era of inclusion and respect within the hotel. But the damage was already done. The hotel's name was now associated with discrimination, arrogance, and inequality. And while they tried to contain the storm, LeBron James, without having to lift a single finger, had exposed something much bigger than a bigoted hotel. He had shown the world that the problem went beyond those golden walls. And without saying anything else, he made it clear that the true test for society doesn't come when everyone is watching, but when no one is watching. LeBron entered that hotel as an ordinary man, without his fame, without his public identity, just to test a reality that many face every day. And the result was exactly what he feared. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about luxury. It was about how the world judges and treats people based solely on appearance and assumptions. The hotel manager didn't see a billionaire. He didn't see one of the greatest athletes of all time. He only saw someone who, in his limited vision, didn't belong there. The impact of this story went far beyond a simple error in judgment. He exposed a systemic problem that repeats itself every day, everywhere. LeBron's case went viral because he is a celebrity. But what about those who go through this without cameras, without witnesses, without an audience to revolt for them? How many people are underestimated, rejected, or humiliated just because someone decided within seconds that they didn't fit in? In the end, LeBron didn't need to raise his voice, demand redress, or seek revenge. The truth spoke for itself. The hotel lost its credibility, and the world was forced to reflect on how status and appearance influence how people are treated. But above all, this story left a lesson that goes far beyond the doors of that hotel. True greatness is not in what you wear, what you have, or who people think you are. True greatness lies in how you treat others, especially when you think no one is paying attention. If you've made it this far, we want to know how this video touched your heart. Comment below and share how this message spoke to you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving transformative content. Leave a like to support this mission, and of course watch the next video that is already on the final screen. See you there.